talk about strategies you can use in the community tonight, and it's really going to wrap up really well all the things that we talked about in all the other classes. Because I truly think that when you go into the community, that's almost like the Super Bowl. You know, it's like that's the least controllable place. It's where you need the strategies the most. You need the most support there. And I think if I think about it like the Super Bowl, I would want to be, the Super Bowl is at the end of the season, and I would want to be the most prepared at the end of the season. And I think that's what you'll see as we kind of go through here. And when we're engaging with therapy, it's very similar. It's rare that we would start therapy and then immediately run into the community. Sometimes you might, I mean, it depends. But most of the time, we want to solidify things in a more controlled environment and then take those out in the community. Okay? All right? And so we'll talk about that kind of as we go. So a couple things, what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to review the fundamentals. I do that every time. I only review it because I want to always bring it back to something that makes sense. So we're going to do that quickly. And then you're going to notice a little bit of a theme here. We're going to talk about using a reinforcement system in the community. So we talked, I think, in session 4 about how to establish a reinforcement system. Now I'm going to talk about how to take that and then bring it out in the community. And then we're going to talk about a visual schedule. We touched on visual schedules a little bit. We didn't do a whole session on a visual schedule. But I'm going to talk about how to bring that out in the community. And then we're going to go over, so this is kind of, if we have enough time, hopefully we do, I want to show how to teach some skills in the community, but I'm going to be using the exact same framework that we've used to teach any skill. It's still the exact same framework that we're going to be using. Okay? And I want to put up a quick reminder here. So we have a Google Drive folder that can be shared really, with anyone who's participated in this course. A lot of things we talked about are going to be fresh in your mind for a little while, but then they'll fade a bit, and that's very understandable. If you want to get on that shared Google Drive, just send an email to either the BMC team. If you have my email, shoot me an email, and we can get that shared with you. That will have all the handouts, all the PowerPoints, everything that we've gone over this whole time will be in that Drive folder. I highly recommend that people do that. As a way of reminder, what we're doing is we're building new pathways in the brain. All right? We were just having a little conversation before about the baby cries, I get the bottle, I get the reward, so the baby's like, oh, okay, that worked out really good for me. I cry, I get a bottle. And that shaping is happening, so people that are listening to this don't know. I just had my 4th child 2 days ago. So she just got brought into this world 2 days ago. She came pre-programmed. Her brain came pre-programmed with some software, right? How to breathe, how to eat, how to do some other stuff, okay? But now she's starting to learn from her environment and create those pathways in the brain. The first one is that. So how do I get food? I cry, food is presented to me. Excellent, crying works. So that gets into the brain, and it gets into the brain the exact same way that we've been talking about this entire time, right? My little girl says, okay, I am hungry, or I am thirsty, or I need my diaper changed. The routine, she really only got one routine at this point, which is cry, okay? Cry, and then I get the reward. And then it all comes back again. Well, wait, I'm hungry now. I cry. I get my bottle. Wait, I'm hungry again. And that is like the first pathway that she's growing in her brain. And as she grows up, she's going to grow more and more in her brain, right? What we're talking about is now we know the formula of how all of this happens. So if I want to teach a skill or a behavior, as we've talked about, I go here. Okay? I go here. This is the building blocks of all learning. That's going to keep shaping and happening over time. All we're talking about is how to kind of come in and know how it's happening and sort of say, okay, well, we're going to decide what the cue is. Or I'm going to decide what the reward is this time. Right? Because I want to teach this certain behavior, routine, or skill. right? Instead of just kind of naturally letting it happen. Okay, and then we come back here. We all know our fancy scale that I have here. One of my other children have been playing with it the whole time, so I'm glad that I have all the pieces that I can bring it for the last session. All right. But so here's the other one. So this is a little bit less applicable for a 2-day-old. All right. But as my 2-day-old grows up, right, maybe my 6-year-old right now is doing this all the time, as we all are as well. My brain is saying, how much effort do I need to put in, and how much reward am I going to get on the other side for that effort? Right? So if I'm being asked to put in an 8 effort, and I'm only going to get a 2 reward, what do we now know? Not going to happen. Right? My brain is saying no, because imagine if my brain said yes to this for its whole life. Tons of effort and little reward. Where would I get to? Nowhere. Nowhere good, right? So my brain's not doing it because of, that's the way it feels in the moment, right? My brain's doing it because if I respond differently and I'm doing 2 efforts and 8 rewards over and over and over again, I'm now expending less energy and I'm getting more reward. So that's what I'm going for, right? And again, if we know that, now what we can do, and we're going to talk tonight about doing strategies in the community and teaching skills in the community, is I can put this in my favor. So if I want to teach a new behavior or skill, then I have it be like this: low effort, high reward. If I want a behavior to maybe go away, I make it higher effort, lower reward, and then the behavior goes away. Right? This is still difficult to do, right? But this is the fundamental behind it. As it was when we talked about language, when we talked about changing behavior, we talked about skills in the home, all the different things that we talked about, we're always coming back to this. Okay? And I skipped ahead a little bit, but our cue, routine, and reward, as we know, that's going to be the building blocks for anything we're going to teach. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how old the person is. Right? So for people kind of listening to this too, what we're talking about here, this is how all humans learn. All humans learn like this. This is not just humans with autism. It's applicable, very applicable, but this is how we all learn. This is getting taped pretty close to New Year's. Anybody thought of New Year's resolutions yet?
Lose weight.
There we go. I'm finally going to go to the gym. I'm finally going to do this. I'm finally going to do that. This is how, if you're going to embed that in your brain, it's going to happen like this. And it's also going to happen over here. I love the New Year's resolution for this, especially, because I think we've probably talked about this, so I'll do this very quickly, maybe for people watching. But if I say I'm going to lose weight as my New Year's resolution, and I'm going to go to the gym, right, I'm going to lose weight, do most people say, well, I'm going to start off with just a light walk around the block, and I'm going to integrate in one healthy thing in my diet? No. Most people say what?
Gung-ho.
Gung-ho. Exactly. I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week for 2 hours, and I'm only eating kale and carrots. That's it. Okay, that's fine, but let me come back here. Right? So that, to me, sounds like a 10 effort level, and then the problem is I don't get an instant reward. Okay? Let me go back to this because I kind of forgot to talk about our latency piece, which is also important. I have to subtract how long it takes to get the reward. So the problem with the gym and the losing the weight is that not only am I going to have a ton of effort over here, but I'm not going to lose the weight immediately. I'm not going to see the results immediately. There's a big latency. There's a lot of time I have to wait, which subtracts even more from the reward that I'm getting. And my brain says, nope. This doesn't work. This isn't something I should be doing. It's too much effort. It's too little reward. And then I give up on my New Year's resolution. Most people think it's because of willpower or something else. I would just go right here. I would trace it right back to this. It would almost be illogical, for someone to some people do overcome that, and they go gung-ho, and somehow they get it in there. It's wonderful. But very low likelihood when you have something like this that it's really going to catch. All right, let's push forward then, and let's talk about using the fundamentals, I think. Using the fundamentals of the community. So the steps to teaching, we already talked about this, they're going to be the same. That's no big shocker to anybody. Here's the big difference when you're in the community, though. You now have an audience. And from doing a lot of work in the community, working with tons of families, having now 4 kids of my own, right? It's a lot different when there's an audience out there. And people are watching, right? People are watching and looking. Probably most of them aren't paying attention at all, but I think they are. Right? I think everyone's looking at me when I get in the line and my daughter wants that candy bar and she's crying, right? And my son's crying or whatever that is. So you have an audience. And the difficult thing when you get placed in that type of environment is that if you don't have a strategy beforehand, it's very difficult to come up with a strategy when you're under duress. I'll go right back to this right over here. How do you think my brain perceives having to come up with a strategy when it's under duress? High effort or low effort? When I'm under duress. High effort. That's a high effort thing for my brain. When I'm under duress, my brain's like, I want to go to something easy. Buy the Snickers bar and move on. Right? That's what my brain's telling me to do. Okay? And I would tell people, right? And there's people watching this, my fellow BCBAs will gasp at me. What I would say is if you don't have a strategy and you're in the community, right? Buy the toy or the Snickers bar and move on, okay? But then come up with a strategy for next time, all right? Because if you didn't come with a strategy, the likelihood that you're going to be able to make it up right then and there on your own, very low. I would just say live through the moment so that you'll go back to that target again, right? But then come up with a strategy like what we're going to talk about tonight, okay? But just know that it's going to be different when you use some of the strategies in the community. As you probably already know, because you're going to have an audience, and that makes it a lot more difficult to do that. Okay? All right, well, we love reinforcement systems. So here's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about. So we talked about reinforcement systems a couple of sessions ago. One of the great things about them is that it gives us a really easy way to reinforce new and growing skills or behaviors. All right? So if I have a reinforcement system, if I'm giving out tokens or I'm giving check marks, Post-its, we talked about all different types, okay? What I have is I have a way to show that a reward is coming without having to actually give the item itself. So now I have something portable that I can take in the community and I can use that to reinforce. Very, very important. Now, what I mean...
Cell phones, like my son, I'm sorry, but when my son, he likes his cell phone, he calls it iPad.
He likes his iPad, right. Well, so one thing then about that is, let's say your son likes the iPad, right?
Yeah.
And I have a reinforcement system where he knows every Post-it that he gets is going to get him 5 minutes of iPad time on the car ride home. Now I don't have to give the iPad each time. I can have my little book of Post-its. I can set my expectation before we go, and we're going to give some examples for that, and I can give out the Post-its instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now, but the only way that you can do that, especially when you're in the community, is this next bullet point right here. You have to establish that reinforcement system before you go in the community, right? So you got to establish it in a more controlled environment. And that's why I really recommend establish the reinforcement system at home first. so that your son or daughter knows and can trust that when I get that Post-it and I trade it in, I'm going to get that thing. Or I earn that token, I'm going to get that thing. Or I get that many check marks, whatever it is, I'm going to get that thing. Just like we are with money. Remember, that's our reinforcement system that we all know. Remember we talked about that? No one really wants like a dirty, old piece of paper. Until I learned that, wait a second, you can buy me things consistently? Oh, okay. Yeah. You want to give me $100? Okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Right? You got to establish that. But then when you have that, now you have something in the community that's more than just, hey, we're going to Target, just be really good. And something great might happen. That's okay. But if I have a reinforcement system that I can use, much better to do this. All right? And this is having a plan. So this is where I would, if I'm consulting with a family, and they're like, hey, I'm going to go to Target. What do I do if I get in the line and then they cry? I'd say, again, if you don't have a plan, buy the Snickers bar and move on. But then go back with a plan, and this would be the very first thing I would recommend. Let's teach a consistent reinforcement system so that your son or daughter can really count on it. They want it. They want the token. They want the Post-it. They want whatever it is. They want that. And then I can say, okay, here's how we're going to get it when we're in the community. And I'm going to break it down and give some kind of examples. All right, but very, very important with the reinforcement system. We talked about this a little bit, consistency, predictability. Actually, we didn't totally talk about this, so we get this in a little bit more. So I think what we know is that we can't control the community, right? You can't control it. When I go to Target, I'm just picking on Target, I guess, here for a little bit. But I can't control what happens in Target. I can't control the temperature and the lights and the sounds and the crying of other children, whatever that is. I can't control any of that stuff. So, but what I can control is this reinforcement system that I'm bringing in. And that gives a level of consistency, predictability. When my brain has something that's consistent and predictable, how do you think my brain feels about that? Let's go over here to effort. It feels very, very good about something predictable, and so that reduces the effort for my brain. Unpredictable, I'm going over here. Predictable, I'm going over here. So I'm going to reduce the effort that's needed when I have something consistent, and I think a reinforcement system is a great thing, right? So maybe I don't love going to the community, but I like earning Post-its. Oh, and I can earn Post-its at Target? That sounds good. Okay, now I'm in, right? So it's a great way to have that predictability in there. And then I think it is always important to remember money as our own example. You had to come in contact and see, wait a second, someone handed that and then I got, I exchanged this thing and I got that from you? That's how you learned about the value of money. That's how your son and daughter is going to learn that those tokens or Post-it or the check marks have value to them. Not just the first time you tell them about it. Right? They might kind of get it a little bit, but that's not really how you learned about the value of money. It wasn't just because someone walked up and told you. You had to see it.
You got to add a little dirty piece of paper with pictures on it.
With pictures on it, right?
Yeah.
But you had to see it get exchanged and see something then come. And then be like, wait a second, okay, that was really good. And wait, when you gave it $10, you got some back, and then that's how you learn. Okay? So it's the same thing with the reinforcement system. Same thing there. All right. I wanted to put this in here about the bribery and reinforcement. This is also a review. We talked about this in that 4th session when we looked at reinforcement systems. But I think this one is big, and it comes up a lot when we look at the community. Because oftentimes, you kind of have to resort to bribery, is basically what happens sometimes in the community. Because if I think about it from a child's perspective, really anyone's perspective, go back to when there's an audience, right? If you think that your son or daughter doesn't understand there's an audience, and then it's going to be a lot harder for you to ignore the tantrum, sorry to tell you, the gig's up. They know too, right? So I think this comes up quite a bit. So bribery. What is the definition of bribery? If I'm going to bribe someone, it's when I'm providing reinforcement after the behavior that I want to end. So I'm going to use the community example of getting in line, and then there's a tantrum because my daughter wants a Snickers bar. Okay? If I didn't have any plan beforehand,
and now when you got the newborn baby, she's going to get her diaper changed.
She can get her diaper changed, which that would be fine. We could go and do the diaper change. I get in the line, I don't have any plan, and then I have the cry, Dad, I want the Snickers bar. I'm not leaving until I get a Snickers bar. If I buy the Snickers bar, that would fall under this definition of bribery here because I'm only providing the reinforcement after the behavior happened. Right? Now on the flip side, reinforcement would be the reinforcement's available before the behavior. So now I'll flip over to that. Hey, Vivian, we're about to get in line. If you go through the line without crying, Daddy will buy you a Snickers bar. Right? I presented the reinforcement before the behavior happened in that case. That's the reinforcement side. That's the side we want to be on. Okay? The bribery side is I go in with no plan. Right? The crying happens and I just say, okay, well, everyone's watching me, and I buy the Snickers. Okay? Now again, and people watching this too, if you don't have a plan, I would just buy the Snickers and move on, and you're fine. You've all done that. I've done that multiple times. Right? And I'm giving this training, so don't worry about it. Right? But then you want to come back with a plan. You want to come back with a plan. And that's the difference between the two. Now, some people might say, well, the bribery sounds a little bit easier because coming up with plans is hard. So why can't I just use that? Isn't it the same thing? Well, actually, it's not. And here's the reason why. I will actually go, I'm going to go all the way back to here. Our building blocks of learning. Okay? And I'll come back over here to the cue. When I bribe, the cue that I'm teaching is this. Cry first, and then Dad will present you with the option of a reward for stopping crying. So I'm promoting the cry again. The behavior that I'm reinforcing there, in that bribery instance, thanks Felicia, I'll get to you in a second, what I'm reinforcing there is the cry. Right? So I get in line, I cry, Dad comes over, provides me with an option. And that's the other thing that happens with bribery. The negotiation continues, right? At first it was a Snickers bar, and it's like, and did I say Snickers? I meant a Snickers and a Skittles. Yeah, yikes. So that's why you got to come up with a plan the next time. Okay, I'm not condoning doing the bribery long term, because it will lead to that. And you will see that happen, right? So that's why bribery, no good. Now let's flip over to reinforcement. And remember that one was, okay, Vivian, we're about to get in line. If you don't cry, or I can insert anything in there. I can insert, if you don't cry and you say a really nice thing to the cashier, Daddy will buy you a Snickers bar. Now the routine that I'm rewarding is whatever I did to fill in that blank. Not cry, say a compliment to the cashier, whatever I'm filling in the blank. That's what's leading to the reward. My daughter doesn't have to cry first to then get presented with the option of a reward. See kind of the difference between the two? Right? It's a tricky one, though, because you got to have a plan going into it. That's the hard part. The hard part is having the plan. Okay? But the cool thing is, once you embed that as the routine, and if we remember that from the video, once that path is drawn in the brain, remember, I can fade the reward. My brain doesn't need as much reward anymore. So once my daughter gets in the habit, once she's done this loop a bunch of times, she gets in the habit of, oh, here's my cue. I got in line at a store. I don't cry. Maybe I say a compliment to whatever I filled in there, that becomes the habit. That becomes the new routine that's built in, and then the reward goes. Because I know the first thought is, well, I'm going to have to buy her Snickers bar every time that we go through the line, and I understand that. But the cool thing is you don't. You can fade that away the same way that I don't need a lifesaver to go potty anymore. It's the same thing, right? When I was little, my mom gave me a lifesaver, and I don't need that anymore because that's my new routine when I need to use the restroom. Right? We don't get quizzes here, so you don't have to learn the definition between the two. I think the main takeaway here is the bribery is happening after the behavior. The reinforcement is happening before. Have a plan. When you have a plan, you're not going to be on that bribery side. Okay? You're going to be on the side of the reinforcement. But no plan, you're probably going to have to resort to this to just kind of get through. And then it's going to get worse and worse and worse because the negotiation then starts. And then it's like it was a Snickers bar, and then it was Skittles, and then it was this, and then it was that. Okay. So, questions on that? I mean, we talked about that a little bit. But, go ahead, Felicia.
I'm sorry. But it's like it was just so easy when they cried, and all they had to do was cry. We changed labor. Now it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yep. Right, that's right. So yeah, when they're little and they cry, that's really the only routine they have, right? They don't really have anything else that they could do. But then as they start to kind of learn and see, the other thing that our human brains are really good at is I can learn new routines to try by looking at other people. So I can look at you, go through a cue routine and get a reward, and my brain can go, ooh, I want that reward too. The next time I see that cue, I'm going to do that routine. And let me see if I get the reward too. Right? So it shapes over time. Yes? Well, so if you think about that too, if I kind of go back to like having the audience part, right? If I'm going into any situation and I am in control of the reinforcement in this place, right? So when I have a young child, especially, right? I'm in control. I have the money, so I'm in control of the reinforcement. If they see me nervous, or I'm kind of looking around, I'm checking in with them all the time. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Is everything fine? They're thinking, oh, wait a second, maybe everything isn't okay. Maybe everything isn't fine, right? And then I 100% agree that is then going to probably give us not as good an experience. What I would say, though, too, is that the consistency is just as much for the parent as it is for the child. Because if I go into a scenario that I can't predict and I don't know what's going to happen next, I'm going to feel anxious because my brain has no idea what's going to happen, right? If I have a plan and I have a reinforcement system that I know, now I at least have a plan. And hopefully I can walk in a little more confident. Yeah, and I think it's hard to get to that place where you can ignore that, but once you get there, it's a perfect place. Yeah. First handout. We'll get to the handout instead. What I'm giving here is I'm giving an example of an activity schedule, a schedule. I'm breaking down a sample of a community outing. Okay? Now, a couple different things to kind of talk about here. The first thing I will say is please don't take this as like the only way to break down a trip to Target. I just had to think of an example. What I want you to take from it is the layout that I'm using here. So what I'm saying here is that we're going to go to Target. We're going to do multiple things at Target. In this scenario, I'm rewarding each one of these things that I'm doing. Okay? And I'm also providing a big reward at the end. So when I do this is an example. So let's look through a little bit of this. I have the car ride to Target. 5 minutes of iPad for keeping the seatbelt on. So remember my difference between bribery and reinforcement. Bribery would be you take your seatbelt off, and I say, just put it on. We're driving. If you just put it on, I'll give you your iPad. Bribery, right? Because then remember, the next time that my son or daughter is sitting in the seat and they want the iPad, what are they going to do? Unclick the seatbelt. They get provided with the reinforcement. So now I have a plan, though. I have this plan, right? 5 minutes of iPad for keeping the seatbelt on. Now we get to walking in the parking lot at Target. In this hypothetical scenario here, I'm getting 5 minutes more on the iPad for staying close to mom in the parking lot.
Or dad.
Or dad, or a caregiver, or whomever, right? So this is another example. Bribery would be you go and run and say, hey, as long as you stay with me, we can just watch the iPad on our way in. Right? Again, if that's what you need to do to walk into the Target without the plan, do it, but then have a plan like this, which is you stay with me, you get the 5 minutes of the iPad. Now we have another thing to do in Target. Now we're going to shop. I did a couple of just examples here. I said shop for food. So you get to choose one treat when you shop for 3 items on mom's list. So now we're engaging with a list. We're looking at a skill that I want to reinforce, and then I have the reward. You have the treat for doing this. Bribery would be the other side, right? Which would be we get into the food line, and my daughter runs over to the Snickers bar. I want this, I want this, I want this. And I'm just like, oh man, everyone's looking. We got to get food shopping, find a bottle. Right? In this scenario here, the way to get that is to help me shop for the 3 items. And then I give the reward. Then we go to shop for bathroom items at Target. I do the same thing. Now I bring the iPad back, okay? And we shop for one item, right? Now remember, this is just a sample, an example. What I want you to get from this is that I'm taking a trip and I'm coming up with a plan for the different parts of the trip, and I'm coming up for a way to reward the behavior that I want, or the skill that I want, or whatever I want to have happen. I have a plan for the reward that I did before we got to Target. Remember we talked about being under duress and being in the game, and everyone's looking. Do you think you come up with this nice, neat plan at that point? I don't think so. You buy the Snickers bar and move on, right? Or you play the iPad the entire time and just get through it, okay? You know, this is a way to break it down.
I've been trying to do that with Deshaun.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing is that if I don't give him the iPad when he wants it, he'll start throwing stuff.
Right, when you're out in the community?
Well, out in the community, he'll do the iPad for the whole time. If I take it away from him, he'll get upset.
Yeah. So that's where we probably get into a little more clinical guidance would be very, very needed there, okay? Because what you look at for that is if I am used to having the iPad the entire time that I go to Target, if then someone were to just jump into this strategy right here, we're going to have a huge problem. Because my brain is used to getting the reward the entire time. It's like being on a certain dose of a drug.
Yeah.
Right? He's used to a high dosage. If I then come in and say, hey, you know what, Deshaun, you're going to take a quarter of the dosage. It's not going to work. So what you might need to do in a scenario like that is this is set up more for teaching him to be able to have a slower, more delay of getting the iPad, right? But it would probably have to start really small, and I want to see a clinician monitoring you as you do that. So if we look at this, and then I'll keep going here. So now we're going to walk back to the car. We're in the parking lot again, and then I stay close to mom in the parking lot. I get the 5 more minutes of the iPad. And then on our car ride to McDonald's, I keep my seatbelt on, right? I get 5 more minutes on the iPad for reaching that. So the takeaway from this is we only went to one place in the community, but then I broke down different things that we were going to do, and I already beforehand decided the reward that we were going to have, right? Now, I always have to keep this in mind about my effort and my reward, though. In this case, I gave 5 minutes of iPad for everything in there. But let's say that this child right here had a really hard time when it came time to shop for food. Like, that was like a really, really hard time, right? Where there's usually a throwing a tantrum on the floor, they're throwing things. That's where then I'm like, ooh, wait a second. This is my problem time. This is a higher effort time. I need to come in with more reward. Okay? So definitely don't take from this, it's always 5 minutes of the iPad, or it's always has to be the same. Right? If it's more than this, and see I have this is still unbalanced. This is a 9 and a 7. It might work, but I got to really tip myself here. So maybe I'm giving more iPad time in this scenario. Or maybe I'm saving a certain app on the iPad just for this time. Daddy only puts in the passcode after we shop for 3 items, or maybe I reduce the amount of items that we have to shop for, right? Because remember, in my scenario over here, I can do 2 things. I can either increase the reward, or I can decrease the effort that I'm asking for. I can do both, right? And those are my 2 levers that I can move. So if I only have maybe a 6 reinforcement that I can give, well, then I might need to bring my effort level down. If I have a 9 reinforcer that I can give, I found a new app I really love and that they've been begging me for, oh, wait a second, maybe we are going to shop for 3 things. Okay? We talked about that when we looked at the reinforcement system. We talked about building new reinforcers and having things that your son or daughter is really excited, they really want to earn. The reason that you do that is not just because it's fun and cool, it's because you can ask for more effort. And this is a perfect example of what more effort means. More effort means more skills. You can ask for the 3 items instead of 1. Okay? You're deciding this beforehand. This is like having my plan. This is where I don't have to resort to the bribery side, which then leads to it actually kind of getting worse. Not kind of, it does lead to it getting worse. No more sugarcoat it. It does. Right? This then leads toward teaching all of these things over here. Right? Okay?
How do we control to minimize the amount he gets?
Yeah, the amount of long pops.
Yeah, he wants the whole box.
He wants the whole box.
Yeah.
He wants to eat the entire, all 12.
Yeah.
So I think what I would say that this might be similar, or to Felicia's question. So right now, is the current amount, does he get the whole 12?
Yeah, he don't stop. He cries.
He cries, yeah, he's gonna, yeah.
He breaks everything until he gets.
Yeah, until he gets all 12, until he consumes all 12.
I thought I was the only one who goes through that.
Oh no, this is really common. So I would think about this with the same example of like a dosage of medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So right now his dosage of bomb pop is 12. Can't go from 12 to 0. Can't go from 12 to 1. Probably can't go from 12 to 5. But you might be able to go from 12 to 12 or to 11 and a half if I then insert another reward on the other side. And this is where I think you guys are in therapy right now. I think, I would definitely have someone look at that, right? Like that would go a little bit beyond kind of a practical strategy like we're talking about tonight. That would go into a lot more of like a clinician would have to write up a plan and really have it be, very precise. But you want to do that though. You want to do that because you're not only it's not just the bomb pop. It's also learning how to have a delay of reinforcement and being able to, kind of fade some of that over time. But if I'm used to 12, I can't go from 12 to 0. I got to kind of go to 11 and a half. The good news though is even if I go to, 11 and one less lick or something, in the beginning, right? Sometimes people are like, well, it's going to take us a really long time if we're going lick by lick to get all the way to 1. The nice thing is that it's almost like a snowball going down a mountain, right? It starts off really tiny, might be the same way with Deshaun too, like just hand me the iPad, I hand it right back. People are like, it's going to take us a really long time, but then that snowball starts going down the mountain. You're creating that new path in the brain, right? Which is that I don't need all of those bomb pops, and I can get maybe this other reward over here, right? Okay? And then I slowly can kind of get away from the bomb pops or having to have the iPad the entire time or all those different kinds of things. But I think definitely, especially for people that are kind of listening at home, that's definitely something you want a clinician to be like really having their eye on, because oftentimes it's not like a straight line down. It's more like you go from 12, you're doing really, really good, you get to 11, and there's a little setback and you maybe need to move back a little bit, right? So you really have to have someone kind of watching that. But yeah, that's a tricky one. And you're not alone there. You're definitely not kind of alone for that. And there's some other strategies in there too. You can modify the box, but there's a couple other things you can do. But if you have that, you just want to work on that other side with the clinician. I wanted to give another example of breaking down, going to multiple places, and look at this, I did Stop and Shop. I already predicted, I already knew, we called each other beforehand. Because I wanted to show kind of another way. Notice I'm using the exact same template. The template's not anything different, right? But now my activities we're going different places now. So we're going to go to Stop and Shop, we're going to go to Walmart, we're going to go to Jumptown, and then we're going to go to Papagino's.
What's Jumptown?
Jumptown? Oh, it's a jump place. So what I'm doing here, so I have my activity. Now I go to my notes and reward. Calm voice and body, 5 minutes of my favorite music in the car, right? What I wanted to show here is I can add in, I'm basically just putting in things in here. I'm putting in behaviors, routines, skills, whatever word you want to say, that I want to continue, that I want to reward, that I want them to build. So in here, I'm targeting calm voice and body, gets 5 minutes of the favorite music in the car, and then I'm adding on a little bit of an extra thing where I'm saying, and if you can give a compliment to someone when we're at Stop and Shop, or we're at Walmart or Jumptown, I'm going to give you an extra minute of that favorite music in the car. Okay? So I'm adding in another piece here, right? Another piece of reward. Now, for your son or daughter, remember the reward's going to be different. Maybe the music in the car doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. No problem. I just had to pick something, right? Maybe it's engaging with a toy, whatever it's going to be, right? The other thing that I have going on here, just like my other one, is I have a plan going in, right? And now I have something that I can do in Stop and Shop, calm voice, calm body. I have something that I can talk about. Hey, you're having a nice calm voice, nice calm body. What music are we going to listen to in the car? Oh, it's going to be from the new Cars movie? Oh, that sounds really fun. Which one are we going to listen to? Oh, it's going to be this one? Oh, okay, good. Keep that calm voice, calm body. Maybe I added a reinforcement system, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, we're almost at another check mark. There we go, because they know what the check mark means, and they know once they get 3 that they're going to get, right? Now I have that. That's that consistency and that predictability, right? And I'm coming in with a plan beforehand. But if I get into Stop and Shop, and I don't have a plan, and there's crying and not a calm body, now I might have to resort to that kind of that bribery side, all right? But hopefully what you can see here is you can break down the activity into really anything that works for your specific scenario, right? It could be the place like this, the Target example. It was different things we were doing at Target, right? All those can just be very specific to where you're going and really what you're thinking about teaching or working on in the community, okay? And hopefully the other thing that this gives is it gives a little bit more of what I find is if you have a plan, you have something you're working on, the audience doesn't come into play as much. It still does come into play, right? But maybe not as much, because now I have a plan. We have something that we're doing, right? Here's our schedule. Here's what we're going to do. Now, the other thing that the schedule can give, and you can do the schedule, you could show this, you could do the schedule anyway, but if you schedule and you talk about where you're going to go first, that adds predictability. That lets me know where we're going. And if I know where we're going on my community trip, what does that do to my effort level? If I can predict where we're going to go next, this way, less effort. But if I don't really know where we're going on this little outing that we're on, or what time it might end, or where we're going to go next in the car, whoop, that brings up my effort level, right? And then I'm going to have a higher reward. So the more predictability that you can build in, right? Now, you can't always do that. I might not know exactly how many minutes we're going to spend at Target, okay? You don't have to have a stopwatch. Well, I only committed to 15. So anyway, I'm not able to get everything. I mean, you might have a coordinated program where you could do that. But, the more predictability that you can build in, the less effort it's going to be. I don't want to go too quick, but the last thing I do have on here is I did want to talk a little bit about if I'm going to try to teach a skill in the community. Sorry, no problem. I'm going to go right back. The handout that you have has a little bit more at the top. It's got the cue routine reward there at the top. So remember, that's my building blocks for anything that I'm trying to teach, whether I'm in the community, whether I'm at home, whether I'm in here. Doesn't matter where I am. This is the building blocks for it. And so I just broke down a couple of kind of like common things that you might work on. So what am I going to teach? That's the first thing I start with. In this case, it's going to be crossing the street. Now the little piece I kind of added on here, right? And I think this is like kind of getting into a little bit something that you might want a little bit of help with the clinician, but I still think that a parent can do this. What are the cues or the signals I'm going to use? This says see target list. Okay, flip to the back, and you're going to see this. I'm going to flip around just a little bit. It should be right on the back page. Now when I say target, what I'm doing here is I'm breaking down this skill of crossing the street into smaller targets that I'm teaching. So my first one is I'm crossing the street when the adult gives a prompt and I'm holding the hand the whole time. Okay? All right? Now when I do this and I'm breaking it down, what do you think I'm doing with the effort? When I break it down. I'm making it easier at the beginning So when I break it down, I'm lowering the effort, right? And then, once I master this, and now I move on to, I'm still crossing the street with the prompts from the adult, but now the adult's releasing their hand 1 foot before we get to the curb, right? I'm building upon that last target that I had, but I'm still keeping the effort relatively low, okay, as I'm building that pathway in the brain. And then I'm releasing 3 feet, I'm releasing 5 feet. If I kept going, I could do 10, 20, whatever that is. But when I break down the skill, I reduce the effort. That's a huge takeaway from this. Right? I'm just using crossing the street as an example. Most of the time, when people are teaching crossing the street or any kind of skill like that, they look to go from 0 to doing the skill. Right? Go from not crossing the street to, okay, you watch me do it, now cross the street. I showed you that one time, go. Right? It's like, wait, I don't know. I don't know what to do next. Right? Breaking it down and teaching it target by target, step by step, whatever you want to say, I'm reducing the effort level. Right? And then if I go back here, sorry, I'm flipping a little bit. I still have to reward, right? I still have to reward. I gave a couple examples here. So play a favorite video once we get to the end of the street. If we make a mistake, go back to the other end a max of 3 times. So again, I'm just giving kind of an example, but a way to reward. And then I gave another way down here, was using a token economy. I get a token when I get to the other side that I trade in for iPad time. Okay? Big takeaway from here is you have to have a reward. So if I'm going to teach crossing the street, and I'm going to be out in the community, and I do this great job of I have my targets, I'm going to break it down, everything's looking real good, we get out there, I'm like, man, I did all this great stuff. Ready, here we go. All you have to do is hold my hand the whole time. And I have no reward. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how low the effort is. If I got no reward, then I'm right here. Right? If there's no reason for me to want to cross the street, I'm not going to cross the street. Or you're just going to drag me across the street. Right? And then I'm not learning anything. Other than my dad drags me somewhere sometimes when I need to go with it. Right? So there has to be a reason. That's why you have to have the reward. And I think most of the time, this gets a little bit lost. You know? This gets a little bit lost. And you can get to that place where it's like, well, I want you to do it because I told you to do it. Okay? Which is fine. That's okay. But it's not going to lead to real lasting kind of behavior change. And it won't lead to someone doing it when you're not there. Because if someone's doing something because I told them to, what are they going to do when I'm not there to tell them to do it?
Do the opposite?
Yeah, probably. Or not do anything at all, right? Because if the only reason you did, because that's still, the funny thing is when I give that example to people, they're like, well, then what's the reward? Well, the reward would be, if my son or daughter does something because I tell them to, the reward is essentially getting away from me, right? Or not having something bad happen for me because they're doing it because I told them to. But then the thing is, when I'm not there, the behavior not going to happen. If I use a reward, though, I actually build the habit in the brain, and the cue or the signal becomes whatever is in the natural environment, right? I teach crossing the street. I use the reward at the beginning. I go down through my target list right here, right? The child learns to cross the street. Just crossing a street. Not only with dad, not only with mom, not only with grandma or with grandpa, but learn how to cross the street on their own. All right? And that's kind of a big difference, but that's why you got to have the reward piece in there. Got to have that. The reward's the key. Another example, notice again, I'm using the exact same framework. I'm using the exact same template. Nothing has changed. I'm just inputting another routine here, a new behavior I'm teaching, staying with the adult when in the community. It's a big one. right? What are my cues? What are my signals, right? In this case, we're going to say time to stay with me, right? Because this is an interesting one. This is a skill that needs to be attached to a person. The crossing street, at the end, I eventually want that person to be able to cross the street on their own without Tim there. Staying with someone inherently means you have to stay with someone. Okay? So that's the cue. And then how am I going to reward? So again, I gave a couple of examples in here. My first example here is I have the reinforcement system. My one token allows for 1 minute, my favorite video, right? So there's the reinforcement system I'm using. My other way here is I kind of just took out the reinforcement system. And this one is I play a favorite video or music while holding the hand, and I pause if they attempt to not hold my hand. Okay? So I'm rewarding you staying with me. You try to not stay with me, I pause the video. Right? Hey, it's time to stay with me, right? Play the video again. Or I can have the reinforcement system if I've got that, right? I give one token that allows for the 1 minute at the end of the trip. So I have a reward that I'm using, all right? There is a breakdown of this on the other side. You can break this down as well. Staying with the adult, holding hands the whole time, and then I have 1 step from the door, 3 steps from the door, using a similar example to crossing the street, right? You know, where you're staying with me the whole time, and then maybe we fade it to a little bit like we get to 1 step, and then you go on your own. 3 steps and you go on your own. Okay? But I'm using the same thing here where I'm rewarding and I'm deciding beforehand what I'm going to do for reinforcement. I'm deciding that beforehand. And then I'm providing it when the child engages in this case, these targets that I'm looking for or the behavior that I'm looking for. Remember, this is in contrast to you run away from me, and then I chase you down with the bag of Skittles, right? And I say, hey, if you stay with me, I'll give you the Skittles. Right? And you kind of get that now, right? We can think about it from the cue routine reward. You're like, wait a second. Now, every time I go to that parking lot, the cue routine reward that I just taught was run away from me, and then I'll chase after you with fun stuff, and then you can get it if you stay with me. Right? Yeah, and that's why I tell people, and you're watching this, like, everyone does the bribery. I mean, it's not like, it's totally fine. You know, everybody does that. I think people get way too hung up on, no, you should never do that. It's just like, you have to do it sometimes. And then you come with a strategy. You know, then you come back the next time with a strategy, and you kind of embed in the new thing. All right? But if you get in the moment and have to stay with you, do it, right? Get in the line of target and you forgot to make the plan or whatever it is, or, you know, you've done it in the past, you don't have to feel a lot of remorse. It's fine, right? But this is how you reverse it. This is how you reverse the trend. I mean, I think that's, you know, kind of a key takeaway here too, is you want to be able to reverse it. All right. Now, a couple other things. I know I'll probably run a little bit low on time. What I hope you see as we break this down is we're going back and we're pulling from a lot of the skills that we already talked about. Again, I feel like the community is like the Super Bowl. Like this is like where we put it all together at the end of the season, and we've been working on all these plays and all these concepts and this defense against that offense and all this other stuff. Communities like that. Because you have an audience, you have people watching you, you can't control the environment. Right? So I would highly recommend that you're practicing a lot of things at home first. I wouldn't just run right out in the community to do it. Practice things at home and establish some of this stuff so that then when you get out there and you're doing these things and you're using a token or whatever that is, you want your loved one to kind of get it, right? Like be like, oh, this is that thing where they teach me stuff. Okay, but I like that. Because whenever they do that thing where they teach me stuff, I get things I like. We talked about that in the first class, actually, which is the concept that when you're doing this, not only are you teaching the skill that you're teaching in the moment, but you're also getting a side benefit, which is showing your loved one that learning leads to stuff that you like. And when people come up to you and they're trying to teach you something, you should like that because it's going to lead to something that you like. That's the side benefit. That's sort of the undercurrent of what's happening if your son or daughter's in therapy too. That's the undercurrent of what's happening. They should be learning that therapy is good. Learning is good because it leads to something that they want. Right? We've probably all been in scenarios where, like, someone's trying to have me learn something that they want me to learn. Who's been in that scenario? Where I'm at a seminar or I'm in a meeting and someone's trying to teach me the thing that they want me to learn. How engaged are you, Felicia, in those meetings?
I'm really engaged.
Are you? Well, good for you, because I'm typically not. Especially what?
Especially when there's food involved.
Especially if there's food involved, right? So you go for the food, right? You go for the food. You're like, I'm here for the food, right? But the food reinforces you coming to the meeting.
Exactly.
Correct? Yeah. It doesn't reinforce the, doing the things that are taught in the meeting. It reinforces you coming. So I think that's another important thing to kind of take away, right? Especially when you're thinking about reinforcement. You're like, why do I have to do that? They should kind of just do it. I understand that. That's great. If you have that luxury, that's fine. But remember that the other thing that you're teaching is that learning is fun and it leads to things that you like. Right? Leads to things that you like. Trips to Target lead to things that you like. Learning how to cross the street leads to things that you like. And then when you do that with Daniel with the crossing the street, the next time that then you teach staying with you or how to buy the Skittles himself in the store, he's going to be like, oh, wait a second, I know this. You're teaching me something again.
Yeah.
I love this. This is great because what am I going to get this time? What am I going to get? That's a good thing. That's not bad. That's not bad. What am I going to get this time is good because whether we like to admit it or not, that's what we're all doing all the time. What am I going to get from this? Our brains are just built that way. Don't feel bad about it. It's a good thing. What am I going to get from this? And how much effort are you going to make me put in? And if that outweighs, if it's this, then I'm in. If it violates this, then I'm out. And if there's no reward whatsoever, as again, I'm sure we've all been there, where there's someone else trying to teach me something that's going to give them reinforcement, but not me, I'm not in. I might fake like I'm in or pretend, but I'm not really in. Okay? So I think an important thing to kind of know there. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this. Thank you.